I think it's especially important because the industry that you're now in with Carvago is actually quite dissimilar. It's quite different to the equestrian industry.
Yeah.
Because the equestrian industry is very much industrial and Carvago is very digital.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Carvago. Where did it start and where's it going?
Oh gosh. So Taz is probably going to tell me off if he ever hears this. Taz, his full name is Sophie, but everyone calls him Taz, so he won't mind you calling him that. So he actually began the business back in 2019. He is former at Yum Brands, which is the parent company for Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and another one. Can't remember the third one, but he'll remind you. So he was working at Yum Brands for quite a long time. He was very successful in his role there. He actually then quit, and I think I remember him telling me the story that when he quit, the CEO at the time who he reported into, they said, "You must be absolutely mad. Like, why on earth are you going to do this?" And he turned around and said, "I won't go to my grave without building Carvago." So he is an in and out passionate horseman. Like, when I say to you he is obsessed with horses, I actually have to tell him off when we go out on trips because he's just so crazy about horses. He runs around. He's like nutty. So he grew up around horses. He's always ridden. He's very much into horsemanship, natural kind of ways. He's originally sort of lived in Saudi Arabia. He came over to the UK and went to boarding school at Warwick. So he studied everything all of his education was done pretty much in the UK. He went to Warwick boarding school. He then went to Loughborough University, which is where we have a weird connection because we both went to Loughborough at very different times, can I add? Whilst he was studying at school and whilst he was at university, he actually trained with Ingela Larson-Smith, who is very, very kind of well renowned for her natural horsemanship. So he's always grown up around horses. He's always had a passion for it. He often says that he was the weird kid at school, that just everyone else was off playing cricket or playing football or doing whatever, and he was sitting there reading Arab books and studying horses. So he's an out and out horse person. Like I can't even explain how mad about horses he is because he puts me to shame. Like, I'm actually quite tame compared to Taz. So he left Yum Brands. He began working on Carvago in 2019. Unfortunately, then the pandemic hit, which was hard for everybody. So he sort of spent a lot of that time there doing a lot of research, doing a lot of kind of building of the technology in the background to just see how it worked, try and test it with a few people, work with these different venues as well and different equestrian businesses who might have kind of slowed down their operations because of the pandemic hitting. So he could actually spend quite a lot of time with them on Zoom calls, doing research with them to just find out, like, what are the pitfalls in the equestrian industry. Taz has a very unique background in that he studied AI and platforms at MIT as well in the US. So he's very, very much got this background of technology, but with a passion for horses. So he's always wanted to combine that together. And I think in the equestrian industry, it's so unique to have that sort of have both sides, because as you've just said, like, the equestrian industry is so industrial, it is so backwards, like it's not at all in the digital era. So I think to have someone that's got that speciality in both was very unique, and he wanted to harness it. You know, there's a gap in the market for it, and he saw that, and he wanted to be able to fulfill that with the skills that he had. So as I say, he did a lot of research, did a lot of design with different businesses. He then started to launch sort of more as we came out into kind of 2021-ish. Worked predominantly at the time, he was based over in Singapore with his work. So he worked quite heavily over there. And then we actually, just before I began, Taz actually got picked up by the Global Entrepreneurs Programme. So it's run by the UK government, and they basically pick 100 startups every year, which they see have potential. And they see to kind of, they want in the UK basically to sort of bring over and they know that can contribute to the UK economy. So he got enrolled onto this global entrepreneurship program. The business then got inverted over to the UK. So we are tied with Warwick University. As part of that program, they kind of like buddy you up with an institution basically. So Warwick University is who we're sort of buddied up with as such. And then I joined in December 2022. So when I joined, it was going, like the business was working, and we were working with different equestrian businesses from around the world. So I think at the time we maybe had businesses in about 20 different countries, and I was like, oh wow, like this is an interesting concept. And when I first met Taz, I mean, when you meet him, he's so like awe-inspiring as a person, and we often make the joke that people get Tazzed because like he just talks and talks and talks for hours.
I have to say, I was like given that term at London International after having a
got
conversation with him. Absolutely inspirational man, though, honestly.
Yeah, you got Taz, definitely. But I think when you speak to him, you see how much passion he has for what he does, and it makes you kind of like want to be so involved with Carvago and what Carvago does. So as I say, I met him a few times before I started working, and I thought to myself, it's a bit of a gamble. Being in the equestrian industry, I know how adverse people are to technology and to being in the digital world. So, but I thought, we've got nothing to lose. The industry's got to go that way at some point. So who better to do it with than someone that's got the background of both? So I joined the business back then. As I say, it was running. We had people operating. Was the product the best? No. Did it work? Yes, but in like its basic form. At the time, we had very much a stigma of being just riding holidays, which, okay, great. We do some riding holidays, and we have businesses that operate with us and they offer their riding holidays through the platform, but we're so much more than that. And I think it's trying to get that across to people, which can be difficult at times. So within the UK context, obviously, we don't necessarily have as many riding holiday providers. We have where you can take your own horse on holiday. We have the odd ones, maybe Wales, Ireland, but I mean, the weather's so bad, you don't want to go on a riding holiday in the UK. I mean, come on. If you go to like South Africa and go on a safari, I'd rather go there than, I don't know, Lincolnshire. So, no offense to Lincolnshire, by the way. So I sort of came in initially on a UK business development basis to look at how can we grow Carvago in the UK and what are the different opportunities that we have. So I looked a lot into riding schools, into people offering riding lessons, so maybe freelance coaches and instructors. Also looking at people who are offering kind of like tickets for equestrian events, which is quite we never thought we would go into that, but actually I had a few businesses approach me about it. So we've looked into more on that side. Looking at livery services as well, looking at people who maybe offer not necessarily riding holidays, but like trekking rides, for example. So we work with a really nice place in Wales that offers like trekking rides around the mountains, which is amazing. It was trying to pick up these different sorts of businesses in the UK that we could really sort of like work with to embrace with the technology. So as I say, sort of my journey through Carvago started there. As I worked closer and closer with the hosts, understanding their needs, what do they actually want from the technology? How do they understand it? Like how do their brains work with it? I think is really important to understand. I then naturally moved over to more of like a product role. So I worked very, very closely with the technology team. At the time, we had only 2 developers. I then told Taz that I wanted a whole new website, a whole new host dashboard, 2 new apps. And he was like, I think we might need more than 2 people. I was like, yes, please. So we actually worked with a couple of great technology kind of development agencies who develops the products for us. We did a massive release last September. So with that, I kind of moved to a head of product role just because that's how I ended up. We then brought in more of a sales team. We brought in a marketing team. Like we started to grow the business. I mean, at the time I joined, I was the only person in the UK. So I was just sort of like fighting fires on my own.
And how many have you got here now?
We've got 6 or 7 here now,
okay. Wow.
Which doesn't seem like loads. But I think this year we'll see sort of massive growth in team numbers. But we've also got team members based all around the world.
Yeah.
So we all kind of like chip in and work together on that side. So so it's been quite an interesting journey, like especially for me since I've been with Carvago, like I've seen such a massive change. And I mean, everyone always says like, yeah, but you've been part of the change. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I have. But like you never see it from like your own perspective, do you? And I think it's always interesting to like once you step back and you see other people and how they react to it, it's really interesting. But yeah, that's sort of how Carvago started, I guess. Yep. Taz and his crazy ways decided that he was going to make this sort of like all-encompassing platform for every type of equestrian business out there.